We all have dreams, but dreams by their very nature can be difficult to achieve. That's where Access Credit Union comes in. Whether it's going to college, owning a car, or building your dream home, your local credit union can help you to fulfill your dreams. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Close your eyes and pull like a dog.
And a new Irish record for Phil Healy, 22.99.
Christy Cooney hands over the Sam Maguire Cup to Graham Canty, Cork All-Ireland champions for the 7th time ever.
Hello and welcome to the Star Sport Podcast. My name is Jack McCarran of the Southern Star, and I'm joined as always by Star Sport editor Kieran McCarthy. Before we kick things off, I'd just like to give a gentle reminder, as always, to our viewers and listeners to please rate, review and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube. The Star Sport Podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union is well known for supporting local West Cork sport at all levels, and we look forward to telling that story throughout the summer and beyond. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years. On this week's podcast, we're going to chat to rising Irish MMA star Dee Begley, who hails from Bantry. Begley picked up her first pro win at a recent Clan Wars event in Belfast, and she spoke to us about that fight, training at SBG in Dublin with John Kavanagh, and her ambitions to reach the UFC. And in part two, we'll be chatting to Cork and Mourneabbey footballer Ciara O'Sullivan after Ephie Fitzgerald's side booked their place in the league final with a win over Donegal last weekend. But we're going to start with rugby this week, following the news that West Cork duo Gavin Coombes and Fineen Wycherly have been added to Andy Farrell's Ireland squad for the upcoming summer internationals against Japan and the USA. Kieran, this, I assume, is simply the next phase in the grand plan for West Cork rugby to eventually take over the entire sport.
100% Jack, you've hit the nail on the head again. This is the next step on the total world domination by West Cork rugby players. But what great news for Gavin Coombes and Fineen Wycherly, two of the finest young sports stars to come out of West Cork in recent time, and they both have really made their mark with Munster over the last couple of years. It's no secret that Gavin Coombes has been the breakout star with Munster this past season. He's finished it with 15 tries. That included 4 tries against Zebra in the Pro 14 Rainbow Cup last Friday night, which was an incredible haul. And he's just had an absolutely sensational season. So it's a fitting reward for Gavin Coombes, who obviously came up to the ranks with Skibbereen Rugby Club. And Banley Grammar he went to as well. And obviously then Fineen Wycherly has been on the scene for the last couple of years with Munster as well. And he's had another very, very strong season. So it's for both of them, and they're both 23 years old. It's the next step in their careers. Both have before been called into the Ireland's senior squads for training. But this is the first time that they've been called up proper, and they're in with a chance of winning caps. So like you said earlier, it's for the Vodafone Summer Series, and that's on in July. So there's a game against Japan on Saturday, July 3rd at the Aviva Stadium. And then 7 days later, on July 10th, Ireland are playing the USA again at the Aviva Stadium. For West Cork sport fans, both games will be live on RTE television. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that we'll see Gavin Coombes and Fineen Wycherly both make their Ireland debuts in one of those games. Hopefully they'll feature in both of those games.
Just on that point then, Kieran, sorry, do you know, I seen that Andy Farrell, I think, named a squad of 37 provisionally. So what's your actual sense of how likely it is that we're going to see either men make an appearance? Surely, at least as a substitute, we'll be expecting to have new West Cork rugby internationals.
You'd think so, because with the Lions series going on as well, kicking off quite soon, you've a few Irish lads involved in that, so there's opportunities there. And I think Andy Farrell needs to use these two games to have a look at some of the younger guns. There are 10 uncapped players named in that 37-man squad, so it's games against the USA and Japan. And it's a chance to give these guys their debut at test level, to see how they get on, to see how they find their feet, because Ireland really need to start planning towards the next World Cup. You know, with CJ Stander gone now, there's a CJ Stander size hole both in Munster and in Ireland, and Gavin Coombes is the man tipped to replace or to fill that number 8 jersey with both teams. So of the two, of Gavin and Fineen, you would think that Gavin is probably a bit closer to getting his debut than Fineen. But that said, Fineen was called into the Irish squad last October before the Six Nations, and that was before Gavin was called in. So Fineen is obviously in Andy Farrell's thoughts as well. So hopefully both will get to make their Ireland senior debuts, because they've both proved over the last couple of seasons with Munster that they're definitely good enough. And I think now is the time for Andy Farrell to give these guys a chance, give them their Ireland debuts and see how they get on.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time for West Cork Rugby. We've spoken about it a lot on the podcast over the last year or so, and just how many West Cork Rugby players are making an impact both at a provincial and international level in both the men's and women's game. So I think on next week's podcast, we might dedicate even more time to speaking about Fineen and Gavin, but we'll park that there for now. And coming up in just a moment, we're going to chat to rising Irish MMA star Dee Begley.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Bantry MMA star Dee Begley finally got her pro career back up and running with an emphatic TKO win over Indra Davis at a Clan Wars event in Belfast the weekend before last. The bout was the first female professional fight hosted by the promotion, and Begley came out on top, finishing her opponent in the second round. We're going to hear from Dee in just a moment, but Kieran, you've spoken to her before as well. She's a very impressive woman, isn't she?
Exactly, Jack. I suppose Deirdre has a background in kickboxing too, and she's with West Cork Kickboxing Club based in Skibbereen. That's the club that's given us world champions like Lily Delacour and Tony Stevenson. And Deirdre is a very talented kickboxer too. Even going back to the 2016 WACO Senior European Kickboxing Championships, she won a silver medal there. And then she brought home a bronze from the Senior World Championships in Budapest a year later. So from that alone, you can see as a kickboxer, she was top class, world class, international class. And she's, as you know now, she's ventured into the world of MMA. And by talking to her, Jack, she seems to be well on the road for a fairly good career in that too, is she?
Yeah, well, she's training in the right place. She's at SBG in Dublin with the famed coach John Kavanagh, who obviously rose to prominence as Conor McGregor's lead trainer. So she's in the right place to try and chase her dream, which is to eventually pick up a UFC world title. And she has it all pretty well mapped out for herself as well. She plans to have 2 more fights this year, hopefully 3 more in the first half of next year. So she reckons if she can get to around 5-1 or 6-1, she's currently 1-1, so 1 win, 1 loss. She thinks if she can get to 5-1 or 6-1 by the end of next year, the UFC will come calling. So she needs to put herself in that position. That's the goal she set herself. And after speaking to her for the bones of 40 minutes last night, I'd be very slow to doubt her ambitions. So I started by asking her how she dealt with 21 months out of the cage after all fights across Ireland and gyms were closed down because of COVID-19. So Dee, after a bit of a delay, you finally got your pro MMA career back up and running with an emphatic TKO win over Indra Davis at a Clan Wars event in Belfast just last weekend. First of all, congratulations. And secondly, how did it feel to be back in the cage and to have your hand raised for the first time as a professional?
Thanks, Jack. I was absolutely delighted. With such a long break, everything couldn't have gone better. And I kind of surprised myself with how calm I was, kind of considering I'd had the break for so long. Walking into the cage, I thought I'd be a lot more full of nerves. But no, everything went great. All of the prep and the training, it felt like, obviously I was still a bit nervous, but nothing I couldn't handle. And yeah, everything came together on the night. It was brilliant.
And I unfortunately haven't been able to find any footage of the finish as yet. I've been trawling through YouTube today, but I know your opponent was of a decent standard because I found some of her previous fights. So she had plenty of experience in martial arts as a whole. Could you maybe describe, just for the listeners, how you got her out of there and how you finished the fight?
So it was a second round TKO. So the first round was, a lot of it was, I was striking, and Indra did a good job of kind of breaking down the distance and, I suppose keeping me kind of against the cage for maybe, I want to say it wouldn't have been half the round, but she put like great pressure on, and she came out swinging. She looked a bit nuts, in fairness to her. She had the game face on. And then, the second round I came out and I just felt like my fitness was so much better than hers. And like, cause I looked across the cage after the end of the first and I was like, I don't feel anyway like how she looks. So, I felt really good. So, in the second round, I had a lot of confidence going into it. I felt very fresh, and I think I was able to judge the distance a bit better. So all the shots I was throwing, just landed like flush. So it was great.
Now, I don't want to dwell on the last year too much and the lockdowns that we've all experienced in Ireland and around the world. But just briefly, for a fighter, being in a gym is so important. Just being around other fighters, being able to speak to your coaches, just being able to hang out with like-minded people, it keeps you balanced. It makes life easier, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. So for a fighter who had just had their first professional fight, essentially, I think you mentioned before we started recording, your first fight was 21 months ago, and now this was your second fight as a professional. So that's nearly 2 years. How have you personally found the period where you weren't able to train or fight, for that matter?
So it was the first lockdown. Obviously no one was able to do anything, and I was down home in Bantry, and I did a lot of, I like kept myself fit. I can't say I kept myself in great shape, but I kept myself fit. The fitness didn't go anywhere, and I was out training with my sister and stuff, so that was great, and it kind of tied me over. It kept me a bit sane. And, everyone was in the same boat, so I really couldn't, complain. There was nobody able to train. And then because I luckily enough, I had turned professional. So I was able to train from June of last year. Obviously not anywhere near the same way that I, usually would, but I've been able to train. I've been able to train my training partners. So, like a lot of time, and it took a lot of discipline to keep training, because we didn't really have anything to train for. It's just this big, dream of like, the future, but there was no like short term like of a fight in a few months or a few weeks. And even there was kind of I had almost a fight lined up last August, and the similar kind of same opponent, different show in September, November, and the shows went ahead, but my opponents just kept pulling out. So unfortunately, I wasn't active before Christmas. And then, we tried really hard, because shows in Europe started kind of continuing, from January of this year. And like, luckily enough, like Indra took the fight in Belfast, and I was, it was convenient enough. I was able to, drive up the road to Belfast and, have my second pro fight. So, in a way it was great. And then in another way, it's like, I want to kind of continue with this momentum and get another fight as soon as possible. So they're hoping to have me in 7 weeks' time on Clan Wars again in Belfast. And it is just kind of a matter of, will they be able to find an opponent? Will somebody say yes? Will they take the fight? And, will they be able to fly someone in from the UK or from Europe? Because Indra kind of was my only option really at this stage in Ireland to fight. So yeah, so hopefully, fingers crossed, the matchmakers get something done, and I'll be fighting again in 7 weeks on Clan Wars.
Well, just on that point about Clan Wars, because I was listening to an interview you did before the fight on an MMA YouTube channel today, and they had mentioned how this was the first professional female fight that promotion has ever held. So quite yourself and Indra trailblazers to some degree. But could you just maybe give us a sense for the uninitiated? What's the actual scene like in Ireland for professional MMA fighters at the minute? Is there much of a scene, or as you said, you're looking at finding opponents from the UK, and is that something that you might have to do as you progress?
Yeah, so even at amateur, to be honest, Jack, like a lot of my opponents, I think I fought 2 Irish girls out of my 10 amateur fights. You know, I fought in Dubai, I fought in Bahrain, I fought in the UK. And, you know, so it is quite, you know, difficult to get opponents. I think, you know, in the last few years, even in the last 2 years since I've turned pro, there's a lot more opportunity for girls in Ireland at amateur to fight other amateur girls at the same weight. And it's great. It's really up and coming. Like that for myself and Indra, you know, I'd say she probably had the same issue as me, you know, finding opponents. But so yeah, more than likely my next opponent won't be from Ireland. She'll be from Europe, from the UK. And like, that's what I'm saying. It's so lucky. It's a shame that we couldn't have a crowd, because like my fights in Ireland will be few and far between kind of from now on. So if in 7 weeks time they're able to have a small crowd in Belfast, I'd love it. I'd love for my, you know, parents to be able to come up and see me fight, you know, my friends and stuff. So look, it's probably unrealistic, but if it was, because yeah, more than likely in the future, most of my fights will be Europe, the US.
If you could just indulge us for a few minutes, Dee, I want to just quickly ask you about the Dee Begley backstory, because I think a lot of our listeners will be interested to know how someone from Bantry has began forging a career in professional MMA. And I think a lot of Southern Star readers will possibly be familiar with your name because Kieran had covered the West Cork Kickboxing Club for years. You would have been involved there with Ian Kingston and the team. So could you maybe give us a bit of Dee Begley backstory? How did you go from kickboxing in West Cork to becoming a bright star for the future of Irish MMA?
Yeah. So I'd say, yeah, like you said, a lot of people probably know I started off from a young age. You know, I was 7 or 8 starting kickboxing down in West Cork. And I'm still, you know, competing in kickboxing with, you know, how few MMA fights are kind of coming around. If it suits, you know, I will compete in kickboxing to stay busy. How I got started in the MMA. So like, obviously, you know, I went from being 8, you know, I grew up in Bantry, kickboxed, you know, every summer, and it was my life. I literally went to, you know, school. I did a good few other sports when I first, you know, I was doing cross country running, basketball, GAA, tag rugby, and a load of kind of other stuff. And they all kind of fell away like when I started, you know, competing internationally with the kickboxing, and I just fell in love with it. So I obviously went to secondary school. That was great. And then when I went to college, you know, the kickboxing gyms in Cork, like they just aren't, like none of the coaches I knew like were like, I couldn't compare any of them to Ian. Ian, in my opinion, is like the best kickboxing coach in Ireland, you know. So it was hard. And, you know, so I didn't find another gym that I would like to train out of kickboxing. So, because I was traveling home as well at weekends to train with Ian. So I said I'd try, and I was always kind of like more of a boxing style in kickboxing. I wasn't the biggest kicker. So I joined the college boxing team, and, you know, myself and Lily Delacour both joined. So we were boxing there for a while, and they wouldn't let us fight at a novice level even though it was our first ever boxing fights. So we flew over to the UK for the Haringey Box Cup. I've 2 Irish 3rd level boxing elite, so the university kind of college nationals. I've 2 elite gold medals from that, and then I took part in kind of Irish universities versus English universities tournament. So I won that as well. And, so it was a great, like, for me, having, grown up doing kickboxing, but kind of preferring the punching aspect of it. It was great to be doing so well in the boxing. And
for listeners who don't know, sorry to cut across you, the Haringey Box Cup is the elite of amateur competition in the UK. So you were obviously competing at the highest level in that sport as well.
Yeah. So I went over and I didn't do too badly. Like, I fought a girl. She was from, I think she was on the Swedish national team, but she beat me anyway. But like, I was well able to hold my own. So it was a great experience. It was brilliant. Really eye-opening. But if like life was different, I would have been this super like national boxer, but we won't dwell on that. But the captain of the UCC boxing team was Aaron Maguire, and he owns his own MMA gym in Cork. So I started with him and BJJ Cork, Liam Beechner up there. So and they wouldn't let me do any striking when I joined the MMA gym. They were like, no, you're not allowed. You're doing like 100 mount escapes, 100 half guard escapes, like everything defensive, for jiu-jitsu. So, and then I just I hated it at the start, because you went from being amazing at one martial art to being like a complete white belt beginner. And it was really humbling. And I just kept going back. I was getting submitted, strangled by like tiny people, it was just hilarious. So I just kept going back, and I loved the MMA. I don't know what exactly I could say I loved about it, but like the wrestling, I just took naturally to it, and the guys were just brilliant. So I had a really, really enjoyable kind of introduction to MMA. And then once I'd had my first 2 amateur fights, I was like, okay, I love this. Like, what's the next step? Like, I kind of knew at that stage, I was like, look, I want to turn pro in the future. And I kind of discussed it with my boyfriend and like my now fiance, but he was kind of saying, look, you need to take it seriously. It's not like kickboxing. It is that bit more vicious. It's a bit more, you're more likely to get injured. And the stakes are a bit higher. They're 4-ounce gloves. They're tiny gloves. So we kind of made the decisions, look, I'll do 10 amateur fights, see how we get on, and I'll call it then, see whether I still want to turn pro. So I did the 10 amateur fights. I did unbelievably well. I finished up my career with a 7-3 record. 2 of my losses were at the World Amateur Championships. One was here in Ireland in Cork, an armbar that I didn't tap to, which shouldn't have been stopped, but we'll get over that. And and my last expedition to the Worlds, I came away with a bronze medal. So I knew I was like elite level MMA, even as an amateur, I knew I was. And then I had my final fight over in Dubai. So and kind of at that point I kind of already said, look, John, I'm turning pro, and like that's when it kind of all kind of became a lot more maybe real. So I moved, I probably should have said I moved from Cork to Dublin in 2017. So it was just before I competed in my first MMA World Championships, and it was kind of the decision that that I only had one other girl to train with in MMA Cork, and she was a good bit younger than me. And, I just wanted to take it seriously. So I texted a girl, Danny Neelan, who I was actually supposed to be fighting, but she got injured and pulled out. And I just said, look, are there many girls in your gym? Would John train me? And he was like, look, he's really busy. He might not even answer your message, but it's worth messaging him. So John was over with Connor for
just to give listeners a bit of background. The John you're referencing is of course Coach John Kavanagh, who has guided Conor McGregor's ascent to the top of the world of MMA and runs probably the most successful European MMA gym, which is the SBG in Dublin. So you got in touch with John. Yeah,
so I got in touch with John. I just kind of sent him a message, sent him kind of like a brief history of like my martial arts career, and I said, look, I'm looking to join your gym. I'm moving up in September. I'm going to the MMA Worlds. You know, can I train at your gym? And in fairness to him, he couldn't have been better. Like, he was over for the Mayweather fight, and he was like, Dee, I'm away at the moment. Call away up, start training immediately. Like, don't worry about it, anything. Like, you know, we'll sort it all out when I'm back. So I was like, look, there's no panic. I wasn't going to be moving up until he was back anyway. So I moved up. First night, I was staying with my cousin. I had no house. I didn't know Dublin at all. I didn't know where I was. I was staying in Ringsend, trying to get out to the Naas Road. Was asking John, who had obviously not taken a bus in like years, how to get a bus to where I was viewing a house. So then, yeah, but it all kind of fell into place. You know, it was, John was brilliant. The first house I saw was great, took it. So I kind of got set up very fast in Dublin. It was great. And then, you know, I've been here now almost 4 years. And yeah, it was the best decision I ever made, because there's so many girls up here for me to train with, the likes of Sinead Kavanagh, Danny Nealon, Katie Saul, she fights for Invicta. So it's really high level girls. So they've really, like, you know, I feel at this stage now we've all brought each other on, but definitely initially they brought me on to, you know, a really high level, like really, really fast. So
So some of those names you mentioned that you're now able to train with, the likes of Sinead Kavanagh, who I know is one of the premier female mixed martial artists in the world. She has competed at the likes of Bellator. And I seen you mention in the same interview I watched today that you've actually sparred with her on occasion, or you train together regularly. And I guess
I was doing rounds with her this morning. Like, she's a tough cookie. Like, how do you find yourself when you're sparring with her? Do you feel like you're at that level, or you're getting towards that level? Yeah. No, I'm definitely at that level. Like, Sinead, though, like, she's a tough cookie. Like, she'll give everyone a hard time. She trains how she fights, so it is. She's a tough training partner, but like, she has definitely made me. You know, I think I was so calm going into my fight, because I even said it to her today at the gym. I was so calm going into the ring, because I was like, no one will hit me as hard as Sinead will hit me. So I was like, I had no issues there. I was like, I can take whatever punches this girl is going to throw at me. So
you're training with the likes of Sinead. You're under the tutelage of John Kavanagh, the most famous mixed martial arts trainer in Ireland and probably the world, really, all told, because of his association with a certain Conor McGregor. And you're training alongside the best of the best every day. And just as thing I noted when I was watching your fights back on YouTube today, they always mention, or at least sometimes the MC mentions in the introduction, she's representing SBG Dublin, which is obviously a huge badge of pride for yourself, I imagine. But does it come with an added pressure for yourself when you know that you're boxing or fighting under the SBG banner? Do you ever feel like you are, in a good way or a bad way, that you have to really live up to lofty expectations? Because people, I assume, always think if you're fighting out of SBG, you are the bee's knees.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's associated from, like, you know, the gym. Like, obviously I'm like really proud to be, and I'm very proud to represent the gym. So I do have that, like, you know, very, very proud to be representing the gym. And yes, of course. And it's not a pressure of the gym name. It's more doing, you know, my coaches, you know, that I'm showing that all the time and effort and, like, you know, dedication they put into me and my training, that it hasn't gone to waste. So that was my biggest thing for this fight. I just felt like I went in there, everything we'd worked on either worked, or everything, you know, I just saw the massive leap I've taken in the last year and a half. You know, and I was so kind of confident in the prep and all the prep we'd done in the gym with my training partners and everything. I knew I wasn't walking out of that cage without a win, you know, and so I was able to stay composed because all the work had been done. There was no what if, buts or maybes. Oh, if I'd done this, I just knew that I'd done everything I possibly could. And, you know, and when you have your coaches telling you, is like, Dee, you're not going to have an issue if you perform the way you've been performing in the gym the last few weeks, then, you know, it's all going to come together on the night. And that's exactly what happened. So no, it was great. Like, and yes, like SBG, it's like I don't even, it's like they've really welcomed me with open arms. Like the girls inside there, did my hair the day before the fight. They were all there like when I weighed in, and everyone was just like, it's a real close-knit kind of community up there. And yeah, it's just a great place for me to be, and it's perfect. Everyone's so supportive. So like, because like it being an individual sport, it can probably be, maybe for some people in different gyms a bit lonely, but I've never felt like that. There's a really great like team atmosphere. So yeah, no, very like, yeah, and it's massive to be able to say that, like, I train in SBG Ireland with, alongside all these amazing fighters, and yeah, it's great. Just very happy.
And before we move on from the SBG connection, I can't have you on without asking the obvious question about the notorious Conor McGregor and any interactions you've had with him, because obviously from the outside looking in, we all see the braggadocious showman when he's building up to fights, and that's the reason he's had the success he had. But I always get the feeling that when he's in the gym, when he's training, he's a completely different man. He's a totally focused athlete. So what's totally your experience been with him?
Totally focused, and he's an absolute gentleman. Like, like if I like am doing rounds in the, like if I'm doing sparring rounds in the cage, he's standing there watching. Like, he's obsessed. He's obsessed with it, but he'll stand there watching you. He'll shout you some advice. Like, he's, anytime I see him in the gym, it's like, hi Dee, hi Conor. Like, he's just, I'm not going to say I like have seen him, like, especially in the last, probably year and a half, 2 years, I probably haven't seen him as much as when I initially moved to the gym. He was around the gym a lot more, but he's been fighting less, so he hasn't been around. But anytime he is, he's a pleasure. Like, he's a bit of a laugh as well. You can joke with him, so it's good.
I can imagine. Now, just before we wrap up, there's just one other thing I wanted to ask you about, and it's just, I mentioned I was on a Dee Begley YouTube binge all day today, so I watched a lot of the videos that you've been in, and there was one promotion video that you made with one of your sponsors, Gym Plus Coffee, which I thought was a very good video. But you spoke about in the past struggling with issues of self-confidence, which I think everyone will have experienced at some stage in their life. But obviously for a fighter, that's a big one to have to deal with, because if you doubt yourself, I assume it's not going to go well. So I kind of just wanted to touch on that and see how that has progressed over time, because I know that video was 3 years ago. Or is it something that you still deal with? I think we all deal with at some level, I guess.
I've made massive kind of leaps and bounds with my confidence over the last few years, and a lot of it was, I was quite especially growing up, I would have, like most people, like you care what other people think. And for me as an athlete, all I cared about was like results. And any, like, I was the best in Ireland. But like when I competed in Europe and I competed in the Worlds, I always just like fell up short. And I, even in school and stuff, I never would have been like, I might have appeared to be like, I don't think I ever appeared to be overly confident, but I like, I'd always put on a happy face, even if something wasn't like, 100% okay. And I think for me, a big thing was I depended on other people too much, what they thought. And, when I moved to Dublin for the MMA, and it was moving away from my friends, my boyfriend, my family, it was kind of like a big, risk. And I did, go through a period of being like, overthinking and, being anxious, like, what if this doesn't work out? What if myself and my boyfriend break up? Am I going to be able to see my family as often? Like, am I going to hate it? So there were all these things, and like, oh, what do people think about me doing MMA? Because like I work like in the kind of financial sector, and there is that kind of like, everyone's so dressed up and so kind of polished that like, you wouldn't see MMA as being something that, someone you work with is into. So I did kind of meet a lot of people who, not that they were ever rude, but they just may not have agreed with what I was doing. So I kind of like over the last few years have had to be very sure in myself. And with MMA, that like I said, there is that whole risk, and there's that whole, the stakes are a lot higher. You can get injured like badly. So I needed to be 100% sure I was doing it for the right reasons. I was doing it for me. I wasn't doing it for anyone else. I wasn't doing it for other people's perception of me. So, I can kind of happily say now that I am, I'm not thinking about anyone else or what they think about me as much as I used to, purely because, it's like, you only have one life. So if you spend half of it thinking about what other people and, you're not going to do everything you want to do. Like if I cared too much, I probably wouldn't have moved to Dublin. I wouldn't be where I am now. So, and, I probably would have just stayed in my 9 to 5, like I'm still in my 9 to 5, sorry, but I probably would have just stayed in the 9 to 5 in Cork and just been like, and I would have stayed like a 9 to 5 training, whereas like I had to go up to my boss and be like, look, I need to work different hours. I need to be able to go training. And, I kept having to push for things. So as I was pushing for things, even with sponsors like Gym Plus Coffee were brilliant, they've been onto it, but like, it can get quite expensive as you're kind of training more. You need more supplements, you need more recovery, you need to like go see chiropractors, physios. And it's just something that like, at the start I would have had to pay myself. And like, I just had to like build my confidence to be like, you are good enough. You need to go ask these people, can they help you, out with supplements, with sponsorships. And it was just taking that leap. And then like, everyone, like as the support from other people kind of grew, then I suppose, I started letting, like, look, these people believe in me, like I believe in myself, like, and we're getting that ball rolling. So, even by doing like interviews like this, it's always kind of like that affirmation that I'm doing everything for the right reasons. So it's very easy to be confident about it when like I know how hard I'm working at it and how much time and effort and discipline I kind of have towards it. So that was kind of the biggest thing. It's not like not going around thinking about what other people think about what I'm doing and giving it 100% and leaving no doubt. So like if I had slacked off my training, or I was going out like drinking with friends weeks coming up to the fight, or if I was doing stuff like that, then like maybe I would have felt a lot more nervous going into my fight. But because I did everything perfect. I did textbook, everything my nutritionist said, I did it. So it's very easy to be confident when you've all the work put in ahead of it.
Brilliant stuff. Well, some great messages in there for any young up and coming athletes in West Cork who are dealing with some of their own self-confidence issues at the moment. Last question then, Dee, before we wrap. And thanks a million. You've been so good with your time. But I just wanted to ask, what is next for Dee Begley? I know you mentioned you have a fight in 7 weeks, but kind of give us a sense of what's your ultimate ambition in the sport. You're obviously in the right place to reach those ambitions, but what are those ambitions?
So the ultimate goal is to be champion of the UFC. I'm not going to say that it's just to be in the UFC, because to be in this sport you need to for me the UFC is the MMA equivalent of the Olympics. So I'm like, that's, if I was competing in a sport that like was in the Olympics, then that's what I would be saying. So that's what I want. I want to be champion of the UFC. I want to be the best in the world, because I know I am that level. I know how disciplined I am, and I'm well able to do it. So, like the next few years are going to tell a lot. Obviously I want kind of to get a few wins kind of knocked off. I think if I go to 4-1, 5-1, then like, that UFC door will open. So that's the plan. I'd love to have another 2 or 3 fights this year. 3 is probably reaching. 2 is definitely achievable. So if I went to 2-1, 3-1 this year, that would be great. And then have 2 or 3 fights next year, and like, at the start of next year, and just really, that's the plan. That's the plan.
Well, it sounds like a brilliant plan, and we all hope that you can achieve it and bring the UFC championship back to Bantry. What a story that would be. Dee, thanks a million for your time, and best wishes with the rest of the year.
Very good. Thanks, Jack.
We all have dreams, but dreams by their very nature can be difficult to achieve. That's where Access Credit Union comes in. Whether it's going to college, owning a car, or building your dream home, your local credit union can help you to fulfill your dreams. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
The Cork ladies footballers booked their place in the final of the National Football League with victory over Donegal in a high-scoring affair in Coombes last weekend. In a moment, we're going to hear from Cork and Mourneabbey's Ciara O'Sullivan. But Kieran, what's the latest on Ephie Fitzgerald's charges? How have they been looking in the league so far this season?
So far, so good, you'd have to say, Jack. They're through now to the league final where they'll play Dublin again the weekend after this. Cork and Dublin were involved in an absolute cracker in Páirc Uí Chaoimh there a couple of weeks back in the group stages. That's a game where Dublin came out on top, but it was a very, very tight game. And Cork really pushed Dublin all the way. And this is a Dublin team that has won the last couple of All-Irelands and have had the Indian sign over Cork. So Cork are playing catch-up in terms of trying to topple this Dublin team who'll be chasing a 5th All-Ireland senior title in a row this summer. So Cork went into last weekend's semi-final against Donegal. And to be fair, it was probably a 50-50 game because Cork were coming off the back of a less than impressive performance away to Waterford down in Fairfield and Dungarvan. Cork won that game, but they weren't convincing. But Cork got the job done against Donegal. They got 5 goals, which was superb. And they won 5-10 to 3-13. It was a real goal fest in Coombes last Saturday. So the end result is that Cork are through to the league final and another shot at Dublin. But almost, well, it'd be a great chance for Cork. They're going to lay down a sign to Dublin if they can beat them in the league final. But in terms of preparation for the championship, it's another good game to get. It's a high intensity game with a lot at stake. It's 100 times better than any challenge game you'll get. And it's a chance too for Cork to see how close they are to this Dublin team, because make no bones about it, Dublin will be the team to beat in the championship. And you'll hear now from Ciara O'Sullivan soon that the Cork are quite confident that they have what it takes to topple the Dubs. And to be fair, Jack, Ciara has been in sensational form so far in the league this year. We're joined now on the podcast by Cork football star Ciara O'Sullivan. And Ciara, before we chat about the weekend's win against Donegal and look ahead to the league final against Dublin, just want to say huge congratulations. You won the PwC GPA Player of the Month award for May. Congrats.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it was a nice honour, and I think particularly because it was the first one for ladies football in Camogie. So definitely won't complain. Nice recognition, and was delighted with it.
You've racked up plenty of awards over the years. What's it like to win a personal accolade like that?
I suppose maybe as you get older, maybe you appreciate it a bit more. But like, I suppose I'm playing a team sport, and I play team sport because I enjoy the team dynamic and I enjoy playing with others. And I think, you know, while winning awards like that are nice, it is all about the team, and that's what we've always been saying. You know, it doesn't matter who's getting on the scoreboard, or it doesn't matter who's setting up the scores or whatever, that once they're getting on the board for us, we'll be happy. So while it is nice recognition, it is all about the team. And I think we've really been showing that this year throughout the campaign so far.
You've been in terrific form for Cork, hence the Player of the Month award, and you continued that against Donegal last weekend. But to look at your role for a second, Ciara, as centre forward, what's changed about your game this year? Because you seem to be getting on the ball more in the opposition's 45, whereas before maybe you would have dropped deeper to collect the ball, but you seem now to be more on the front foot. Has your role changed? Is it a specific kind of change this year?
Yeah, I suppose you could say what has changed is that I've listened to management a bit more, because they have been encouraging me to stay up in the forward line a bit more. But I suppose I do struggle a bit with that in terms of if your back attacks, I'd find it very hard not to track them or not to track back and help. But I'm being encouraged to do that. So it has been a bit of a change for me to try and stay up and not go back as much as maybe I would have previously. But it has been conscious thing, I suppose, for management to tell me to do that. And I think I have been doing it all. I think I got a kick out from Martina on Saturday, so no doubt I'll hear about that Wednesday night. But other than that, I have been mainly staying forward. So I think, as a centre forward, your role is to stay up in the forward line and try create as much as possible. And I think I've been a bit more focused on that maybe than tracking back as much as I might have done previously.
And the evolution of your role over the years, like you said, now you're kind of trying to stay up in the forward line, but you have been all over the pitch. Have you found yourself that your role has evolved and changed over the years?
I don't know. I think no matter, like, even in 2008 when we started and up to now, like, your role has always been to work as hard as you can. And like I played for a good few years on wing forward, and I suppose that does lean itself to tracking back a bit more and working up and down a bit more. And maybe when I was a bit younger, I enjoyed that role a bit more. But I don't like. I honestly think wing forward is probably one of the hardest positions on the team in the modern game, and particularly in ladies football. So I'm quite happy to be in the centre and holding the forward line a bit more. But I don't think it has evolved that much. Maybe just that the fact that I used to play wing and now play centre forward, I suppose that's the biggest change I've noticed. But as I said, from when we were there with Eamon all the way through to Ephie now, it's always been about wherever you're playing, working as hard as you can and doing what you can for the team. So in that sense, I think my role is the same.
Yourself and Orla Finn have both been in top form for Cork. And when you consider too, Ciara, that you've been missing a couple of, you could call them regular forwards in the last couple of years. So like yourself and Orla have to take on even more responsibility. I was looking there, obviously, Saoirse Noonan is focusing on soccer. Anya Terry has been injured. Darren has been injured. So the likes of yourself and Orla, so did you actually feel that you have to take on that extra responsibility because you have those younger players, then you've Sive and Emma Cleary and those, so you have to kind of help them find their feet at this level?
To be honest, what I found this year all over the team, but I suppose I'm more focused on the forwards, is the competition for places. So I think maybe speaking for both me and Orla, we're just glad to get on and wherever it is, and we realise that, just because we've been there a good few years or we're that bit older doesn't mean we're entitled to start in any game. So I don't think we'd be viewing it as taking on more responsibility. I think we're just trying to get our place to start to help the team, and then anything you can do once you are, named to start and help others and bring them in. And you do have the case like Katie Quirk, who started against Waterford and did brilliantly, and obviously you're going to have maybe a bit more nerves for her in her first start than we would have. But I think it's about just trying to relax those players and bring them into the game, because they're all very, very capable and good enough to be on any inter-county team. So I think for me, Orla, for all the forwards, it's just about trying to get on that starting six, because it's getting very hard. And when you mentioned the likes of Darren and Terry to come back in from injury, like, we'll all be grasping to hold on to that jersey. So it should be exciting over the next few weeks.
I know it's almost a cliche to say about competition for places, but when you look at the Cork team over the last couple of games, Ephie has made changes in nearly every game, and that just highlights the strength and depth you have at the moment. And you touched on it there, Ciara, like, there's fierce competition for places at the moment. There
is, and like I obviously was speaking of the forwards there, but in the back line, like you had Emma Spillane playing wing forward the last day. You have Marie Ambrose coming back from injury. Claire O'Shea doing brilliantly when she came in. Maeve Callahan doing brilliantly when she came in. It's just frightening, the competition for places, and that's throughout the team. Like, I suppose Eve Murphy hasn't got a run yet. She did against Tip, I think, but like hasn't got a lot of game time. She's another great player midfield. So there is massive competition all over the field, and I think that has stood to us. We've had people get great game time in the league, and particularly I think that's a good testament to management when there was only 3 round robin games in the league, whereas previously, we might have had 5 or 6. So that's great to see, and hopefully that will stand to us going into championship now in the next few weeks, because I think it's no longer a game of 15. You're going to need 20, 22 or whatever players coming in on the day.
And we saw that the Cork used your I think 4 or 5 subs against Donegal last weekend in the league semi-final. What a cracker up in Tuam. Just looking at the score there again, 5-10 to 3-13, 8 goals, a real goal fest there. The Cork came out the right side of it. What's the big takeaway, the big learning and the big positive that you're taking away from that game, Ciara?
I suppose the positive, and it kind of is maybe in line with the Dublin game as well, that if we build up a lead and if we lose it, we have that fight back. So obviously we went 8 points up early in that game and we came back level at half time, but we did have another kick in us, and like that against Dublin when we went 5 up and then I think 7 or 8 down, there was another kick in us, and now we didn't get over the line that day. But I think that's a very big positive to take, is that I suppose we're never dead and buried, and there is always a fight till the end in us. So that was good to see. Obviously then lots to work on. As I said, we were 8 points up after probably 10 minutes or so, and to give up that lead as easily as we did is something we'll have to look at and try and improve going into the league final now.
Looking at the Mourneabbey contingent, he got 3 goals, 3-1 the last time. Maura got a goal, Breed got a goal, so you were flying the Mourneabbey flag.
Yeah, so I think, to be fair, Breed has been, it's no coincidence that Breed got in the Waterford game, and again the last day in training she's been consistently one of the best when we're doing the one-on-ones and the most comfortable. Me and Maura maybe wouldn't be as comfortable in that scenario, so we're just happy to see the green flag when we were going through. And to be fair, Maura struck hers very well. She gets a bit of stick maybe for not being that comfortable in front of goals, but she pulled out the left leg and stuck it very well. So it was a good day for the club, I suppose.
Like Cork have had a fair few goals in the league so far. We had 5 against Donegal the last day, 4 against Dublin and Páirc Uí Chaoimh a couple of weeks ago. There was a couple down in Dungarvan as well. Is that an emphasis on going for goals this year?
Yeah, it is something we've made a conscious decision of, and I suppose not a conscious decision, but just that we're more aware of looking back on matches from last year where we had goal chances and didn't even identify them as goal chances. So it's not a case that they were saved or hit wide for a goal. We either went to tap the ball over or we hit it wide for a point. So we have done a bit of work on identifying if there's an overlap, that's a goal chance, and that in that case a point is kind of a bad thing, that that's worst case scenario, you want a goal. And I think we're seeing the rewards of that in the league, and we still work to do in that sense. I think I hand-passed the ball over the bar the last day that possibly, if someone across the middle, that was a goal chance. So we definitely have stuff to work on that, but I think we are seeing the benefits of that focus that that management have brought this year in identifying goal chances as opposed to taking a handy point.
I think you've 3 goals to your name in the league. So how would you rate your finishing?
I'd say one of them at least anyway. It was a tap in, a palm in, which would be probably where I'm most accurate, because once it goes to the boot, it could go anywhere. So it's been lucky enough. I suppose we keep saying it doesn't matter who scores, and I think that everyone who's got their goal, it's been kind of nearly put on a plate by someone else, and you just have the job of finishing it. So hopefully that will continue. And I think that's another reason why we have got so many goals, because people aren't concerned with, getting your name on the scoreboard. We all know that's not what it's about, or that's not what management are looking for. And I think that has stood to us.
The Prize for beating Donegal last weekend is a league final against Dublin on Saturday week in Croke Park at 7:30. I mentioned there earlier, Ciara, you had a classic game there a couple of weeks ago in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Dublin eventually won that 3-15 to 4-11. But what were the big learnings that you took from that game?
Yeah, I suppose one of the things that hopefully we'll bring into the next day is the disappointment, because I know it was only a league game, but when it finished, everyone was saying we had a good fight back and we learned a lot from it, and it's only league. But when you're a player and the final whistle is gone and you've lost 5 points, it doesn't matter. Any of that doesn't matter. You're just sickened to have lost. So hopefully that bit of disappointment and hurt will come with us into the next day. I think we did well in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, the kickback. Previously maybe if Dublin got a run on us, they could have ran out maybe comfortable winners, but we pulled back and we kept fighting to the end and had a chance off the post, that could have gone over for a draw. So I think that would be very encouraging going in the next day, that we're not going to give up. We're going to be there till the end, and they're going to have their purple patch, of course. They're All-Ireland champions, but just that we keep the head and know that there'll be a purple patch for us as well. So I thought that was very encouraging. And again, we did manage to create goal chances and to get some goal chances. So if we can do that again, and I think we missed a good few against Dublin. I know we got 4 goals, but we did hit the keeper. She had a great game that day, to be fair. But if we were a bit more clinical in goals or in front of goals, you could have been a different result. So I think if we build on that for the next day, we'll be in with a good shout.
Do you think this Cork team is getting closer to getting one over in Dublin and turning the tables on the Dubs?
I'd like to think so. Anyway, and I did an interview last week before the Donegal game, and a lot of the questions were about Dublin, which it's all well and good to be talking about Dublin, but I think the only people that can afford to focus on Dublin are Dublin. All the rest of us have to look in-house, because there's loads of good teams in. We only just got over the line against Donegal, had a great battle with Waterford, Galway, Mayo. There's so many teams that are in with a shout. So I don't want to over focus on Dublin, but I suppose going into the league final against them now, we would like to think we're getting a bit closer to them. I suppose the thing is that they're always going to be trying to increase that gap by another bit. But I think the mentally what the game of the league would have stood to us massively in terms of that fight back and knowing that we are able to match them, and hopefully we can do that in 2 weeks' time.
You're going to give out to me now, but I'm going to ask another question about Dublin, because it's just an interview I read on the 42, I think you did last week after winning the award, and it was a very interesting point you make, Ciara. It was about the physicality of the game and not being bullied in the game against Dublin. Do you think that's very important for Cork, or for any other team for that matter, just to stand up against a team like Dublin?
I do, and I think a lot of the time what can happen against a team who are All-Ireland champions for the last few years and who are obviously very good, is that you kind of wait for them to take the game or bring the game to you instead of taking the game to them. And I think that's a big learning point for us. I don't think we're any weaker or more unfit or less fit than Dublin physically, but I think at times we stand off and let them, I suppose, bully us, for want of a better word. And I think we didn't do that in the league, in the league game a few weeks ago. We really went at them, and, we won a lot of those 50-50 balls and we weren't standing back. And no doubt they're going to up the intensity again for the league final. So we'll need to match that. But I think that is an important point for us to be aware of the fact that, we're training as hard in the gym and doing all our S&C the same as they are. And that a lot of it then, when it comes to match day, is about mental strength and just being prepared to, I suppose, put your body on the line and be on, knowing of the fact that you can take the hit. And I think we did that 2 weeks ago, and we'll have to up it again going forward.
And like I was saying too, Ciara, this game is on in Croke Park on Saturday week. And Croke Park is a ground that you're well used to. You've played there a lot. But for the younger members of the Cork team, how important is it for them to get into Croke Park and play as much as they can and almost normalise the experience of playing in Croke Park? I'm thinking of Eric O'Shea, Katie Quirk, the likes of Sive O'Leary, all these younger players that the more times they can play in Croke Park, it almost takes the miss out of the stadium, so they become used to the big occasion up there.
Yeah, I do think it's very important, because, we're hoping to be in with a chance later in the year to play in Croke Park. And if you do, at that stage, hopefully there would be crowds there, and it can be very daunting for your first time playing in Croke Park. I suppose we've been very lucky in recent years to have semi-finals, league finals, etc. there, so it is becoming more normalised to play there. But it is great for younger players to get that experience under their belt in maybe a league game as opposed to a championship game where there is a bit more pressure. So that'll be great. I think I keep mentioning that for the younger girls, but I think anytime you play in Croke Park, it's a great honour, and you still have maybe a bit more nerves before the match than you would ordinarily have. And they leave the minute the match starts, of course. But I think that would stand to us going forward in Championship to get those younger players used to playing in Croke Park.
So even for you, one of the most experienced players on the Cork panel, possibly the most experienced player, you would still get the butterflies before a game in Croke Park?
Yeah, I get butterflies before every game. I was awake at 5 now Saturday morning before the Donegal game, so I don't think it gets any easier the older or more experienced you get. But I think it's good to have nerves, maybe not if they're waking you at 5, but in general it's good to have nerves. If you channel them in the right way, and as I said all the time anyway, once the match starts, those nerves go out the window and you're just focused on the ball and trying to beat your player. But yeah, I definitely do get nerves all the time.
No, it's a huge game to look forward to on Saturday week, and we'll all be cheering you on. So thanks so much, Ciara, for joining us on the podcast again. You're becoming a friend of the show down here in West Cork, so thanks for giving us of your time, and best of luck on Saturday week.
Thanks very much, Kieran. Thank you.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Kieran, before we wrap things up, you might just give us a quick taster for what readers can expect in this week's Southern Star Sports section. Another packed edition, I have no doubts.
All hail the Bearhaven golfers. That's all I'll say, Jack. What a historic day, or a couple of days, for the Bearhaven Golf Club team at the AIG finals up in Donegal last week. They won the Jimmy Brune Shield final. They beat Ballinasloe in the semi-final and then beat Baltinglass in the final. So this little 9-hole golf club in Beara are All-Ireland national champions, which is an incredible feat for the club. And I've caught up with a couple of team members for this week's Southern Star. They're on the front page. They have a full page inside. So anyone from Bearhaven Golf Club listening to this, or anyone listening to this podcast who knows anyone in and around Castletown Beara and Beara, spread the word, because this is a souvenir special for those All-Ireland winning golfers. Like I said, a great feat for Bearhaven Golf, and hopefully we will have some of those team members on an upcoming podcast, so that's one to keep an eye out for. Plenty going on in this week's Southern Star, including a match report and reaction as Newcestown won the Carberry Junior B football final against Randallogue last weekend. Super win for Newcestown, a game of two halves. They were a couple of points down at half-time, but they held Randall scoreless in the second half while they took over to win by 2-10 to 2-4. So that's well worth checking out. We didn't touch on the Cork footballers yet in this podcast, but they beat Westmeath to secure their Division 2 Football League status for next year. It was a shootout up in Páirc Uí Chaoimh last Saturday afternoon. Cork got the job done. They're going to be in Division 2 next year, but I have to say, Jack, it's must be concerned to cough up 25 points against Westmeath, and they also had a couple of goal chances too. So if I'm just looking down the line at what possibly is coming in the Munster Championship, Cork really need to tighten up at the back, otherwise they could be in a bit of trouble. We also have match reports and reaction from Cork's Ladies Football League win against Donegal. The Cork Camogie team bowed out of the league semi-final, losing to Galway. The Cork Hurlers also lost to Galway last weekend. We also have live soccer back in the Southern Star. We have a match report from Lyre Rovers against Drina Rangers, which was on Tuesday night. Schoolboy Soccer came back with a bang last weekend too. And also I have a feature on Bandon Camogie Club's first ever senior adult team, which is a superb for the club. The club was set up in 2017 with underage teams, and each year they're adding a new team and a new team. And now this season they've added an adult team to Bandon Camogie Club for the first time. The emphasis is on fun and fitness. And this is an important step for Bandon Camogie Club too, because up to now, players could play up to under 17 with the club. But if they wanted to continue and play adult camogie, they'd have to leave and join another club. But now Bandon Camogie Club has given all their young members an adult team to aim for. So that's great news for Bandon Camogie Club. So we've that and a lot more in an action-packed Southern Star.
Sounds great, Kieran. And if you can't make it to a shop across West Cork or further afield, you can always subscribe to the Southern Star digital edition online. Just go to www.southernstar.ie/e-paper and read the Southern Star on your computer, tablet, or smartphone for less than €2 per week. What an absolute bargain. Thanks for listening to the Star Sport podcast. We'll be back at the same time next week. If you enjoy these shows, please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Slán Tamil.